I didn't feel anger in that moment. Not the kind people expect. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Controlled. The kind of feeling that doesn't push you to act, but forces you to understand. Because now there was no confusion left. No guessing. No doubt. Just truth. She paced slowly while talking, her footsteps soft against the floor. I could hear the slight shift in her voice when she turned, the way people move when they're trying to stay relaxed but aren't completely comfortable. I know. I wish I could have stayed longer, she said, her voice almost regretful. Stayed longer. That phrase repeated in my head. Because it meant this wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just talking. There was time. Physical time. Time spent somewhere else. With someone else. And suddenly, everything from the past few weeks started connecting. The distance. The late nights. The subtle changes. It all made sense now. I leaned back slightly against the headboard, still careful, still silent. My eyes were open now, staring into the dark room, but my focus was somewhere else entirely. Every word she said was building a picture I couldn't ignore anymore. I just have to be careful, she whispered. He's starting to notice things. That line didn't hurt. It clarified. Because it meant she knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was awareness. Intentional. Planned. And that's what changed everything. There's a difference between someone making a mistake and someone managing a situation. And she was managing it. I exhaled slowly, quietly, keeping everything controlled. Because reacting in that moment would have changed nothing. It would have turned truth into chaos. And I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. Her voice softened again, almost like she was smiling. No, you don't have to worry. I'll figure it out. Figure it out. That phrase stayed with me. Because it meant there was a plan. Maybe not fully formed. Maybe not perfect. But something was there. And I wasn't part of it. I stayed there for a few more minutes, listening not because I needed more proof, but because I needed to understand the full picture. The tone. The rhythm. The way she spoke. All of it mattered now. Because once you hear something like that, you don't just hear words. You hear intentions. And her intentions were clear. Eventually, her voice lowered, the conversation slowing down. Shorter sentences. Softer tone. The kind of ending people have when they don't want to hang up. Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow, she said. Pause. Then quieter. Good night. Silence followed. Real silence this time. Not the kind that hides something. The kind that reveals everything. I heard her footsteps again, slow, careful, returning to the bedroom. I closed my eyes just before she walked in, returning to the same position I had before. Still. Calm. Controlled. The bed shifted slightly as she got back in. Her breathing settled. And within minutes, she acted like everything was normal again. But nothing was normal anymore. Because now I didn't have a feeling. I had truth. And truth doesn't create noise. It creates decisions. I didn't confront her that night. Didn't ask questions. Didn't react. Because once you hear the truth, the next step isn't emotion. It's action. And as I lay there pretending to sleep again, I wasn't thinking about what she said. I was thinking about what I was going to do next. The next morning felt normal. At least on the surface. The kind of normal that only exists when one person knows something the other doesn't. The room looked the same. The routine stayed the same. Even her voice when she spoke sounded the same. But for me, nothing was the same anymore. I woke up before her. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind never really shut off. The moment I heard that call, something shifted permanently. Not emotionally. Not immediately. But mentally. Everything became clearer. Sharper. More controlled. I got out of bed quietly, moving the same way she had the night before. Careful. Silent. Almost instinctively. There was something strange about that, how quickly I adapted to the same behavior I had just discovered. But that's what awareness does. It changes how you move. In the kitchen I stood still for a moment, just thinking. Not about what happened, but about what it meant. Because the truth isn't just in the words. It's in the pattern. The intention. The consistency. And everything I had seen and heard pointed to something that wasn't temporary. This wasn't new. It wasn't accidental. It was ongoing. And that realization didn't break me. It grounded me. Because once you understand something fully, you stop reacting to it emotionally. You start dealing with it logically. I made coffee the same way I always did. Measured. Routine. Controlled. Because routine keeps things stable when everything else feels uncertain. A few minutes later, she walked into the kitchen. Morning, she said casually. And just like that, the performance continued. I turned slightly, looked at her, and nodded. Morning. Nothing in my voice changed. Nothing in my expression gave anything away. Because this wasn't the moment. And I wasn't going to create one. She moved around the kitchen like she always did. Comfortable. Familiar. Acting like everything was exactly how it had always been. And that was the most unsettling part. Not the lie itself, but how easily she lived inside it. Did you sleep okay? She asked. That question almost felt ironic. Yeah, I said simply. And that was it. No tension. No suspicion in my tone. No hesitation. Because if someone believes you don't know something, they relax. And I needed her relaxed. We sat down briefly, the silence between us not awkward, but different. At least for me. For her, it was just another morning. But for me, every word, every movement, every glance was being processed differently. She checked her phone once. Quickly. Subtly. But I noticed. Of course I did. Because now I wasn't just present. I was aware. There's a difference. She finished her coffee and stood up. I've got a long day today, she said. Might be late. And there it was again. Another piece of the pattern. Another line that before would have meant nothing. But now, it meant everything. All right, I replied calmly. No questions. No reaction. Because I didn't need answers anymore. I already had them. She left shortly after that. Same routine. Same movement. Same goodbye. But this time, I didn't watch her leave with uncertainty. I watched her leave with clarity. The moment the door closed, the house felt different. Not empty. Not quiet. Clear. Like something hidden had finally been revealed, and now there was space to think without confusion. I sat down again, not rushed, not stressed, just focused. Because now this wasn't about discovering anything. This was about deciding something. There are two ways people react to truth like this. Emotionally or strategically. And emotional reactions are temporary. They feel strong in the moment, but they don't lead anywhere. Strategic decisions, on the other hand, change everything. I picked up my phone and looked at it for a moment, not to call her, not to confront her, but to think. Because once you act, you can't take it back. And I wasn't going to move without being sure. I replayed the call in my head, not the words but the tone. The certainty. The familiarity. That's what mattered. Because words can be explained. Tone can't. And her tone told me everything. This wasn't something she was confused about. This was something she was choosing. And once I accepted that, everything became simpler. Not easier. Simpler. I stood up and walked slowly through the house, looking around, not emotionally, not attached, just aware. Because the truth changes how you see things. It removes assumptions. It removes comfort. And what's left is reality. And reality doesn't need interpretation. It just is. I didn't rush into action. Didn't make any sudden decisions. Because this wasn't about reacting to what she did. It was about deciding what I was going to do next. And that decision was already forming. Quietly. Clearly. Without emotion. Because once respect is gone, everything else becomes easier to let go of. And standing there, in a house that looked the same but felt completely different, I realized something important. This wasn't the moment everything broke. This was the moment everything became clear. And clarity always comes before action. By the time she came home that evening, everything was already decided. Not in a rushed way, not emotionally, but clearly. The house looked exactly the same as it always did. Nothing out of place, nothing dramatic, nothing that would immediately signal that something had changed. Because this wasn't about creating a scene. It was about control. Real control, the kind that doesn't need to show itself to exist. I didn't sit there waiting for her. I didn't stand by the door or prepare anything rehearsed in my head. I was already where I needed to be, calm, still, grounded in a decision she didn't even know had already been made. Because when you know the truth, you don't chase moments. You let them come to you. The door opened and her footsteps followed, familiar and relaxed, just like every other day. From her perspective, nothing had changed. She walked in like she always did, comfortable, unaware, completely inside the version of reality she believed was still intact. Hey, she said casually, dropping her bag down like nothing was different. Hey, I replied, matching her tone perfectly. No tension. No hesitation. No sign of anything beneath the surface. She moved through the space the same way she always did, going about her routine without a second thought. And for a moment I just watched. Not with anger, not with suspicion, but with awareness. Because once you see something clearly, you stop reacting to it. You start understanding it. How was your day? She asked, her voice light, almost automatic. Good, I said simply. Short. Controlled. Enough to answer but not enough to open anything. And that's when it started, the smallest shift. Not obvious, not immediate, but there. The kind of shift people feel before they can explain it. She paused slightly, just for a second longer than usual, her eyes moving toward me briefly before she looked away. It was subtle, but it mattered. Because people can sense when something is different, even if they don't know what it is yet. I'm going to shower, she said after a moment. I nodded, nothing more. No questions, no reaction. And just like that, she walked away, still unaware, still comfortable, still thinking everything was exactly how she left it. I didn't follow her. Didn't check anything. Didn't rush into confrontation. Because there was nothing left to discover. The truth was already clear. Now it was just about timing. She came back a while later, relaxed, changed, settling into the evening like nothing had shifted. From the outside, everything looked normal again. But normal wasn't there anymore. It had already been replaced by something else, something quieter, something more controlled. I leaned back slightly and looked at her, not intensely, not aggressively, just enough to be noticed. And she noticed. What? She asked. It was a small question, but it meant something. Because that's how awareness starts, not with certainty but with discomfort. Nothing, I said. And that word carried more weight than anything else I could have said. She frowned slightly, not fully, just enough to show that something didn't sit right. You're acting weird, she said. And there it was, the beginning of it. Not suspicion yet, not fully, but the first crack. I'm just tired, I replied. Simple. Easy. Believable. And she accepted it. But something had already changed. Dinner was quieter than usual. Not awkward, not tense, just different. The kind of quiet that feels unfamiliar even when everything else looks the same. She checked her phone once. Then again. Quick glances. Subtle movements. But now, every small action stood out. Because awareness changes what you see. Long day? She asked again, trying to fill the space. Yeah, I said. Again short. Controlled. Enough to respond, but not enough to open anything. And that's when the pressure started building. Not from me directly. But from the space between us. Because silence, when it's different, creates questions. Later that night, we went to bed like always. Same routine. Same positions. But this time, everything felt different. Not visibly, not physically, but internally. Because I wasn't waiting for something anymore. I was ready. Her phone lit up again. Same time. Same pattern. And this time, I didn't need to pretend not to notice. I just stayed still, letting everything play out exactly as it had before. Because patterns don't lie. They repeat. She picked up the phone. Paused for a moment. Then slowly got up again, moving carefully, quietly, just like the night before. And as she left the room, I opened my eyes. Not shocked. Not emotional. Certain. Because this wasn't new anymore. This was confirmation. And confirmation removes doubt. I sat up slowly, looking toward the doorway she had just walked through. The room was quiet again, but this time the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clear. Because now, I wasn't listening for the truth anymore. I already had it. Now, it was just about what I was going to do with it. Because knowing something changes you. But acting on it, that's what changes everything. And as I sat there in the quiet, fully aware of everything that was happening just beyond that door, I realized something important. The moment of truth isn't about discovering something. It's about deciding when to reveal it. And that moment was coming closer than she thought. That night, I didn't follow her right away. I didn't rush out of the room or try to catch every word she was saying. I didn't need to anymore. The truth wasn't something I was still searching for, it was something I already had. Clear. Complete. Final. And once you reach that point, everything changes. You stop reacting. You stop questioning. You stop waiting for more proof. You decide. I sat there for a few seconds after she left the room, the silence around me no longer heavy or confusing, but steady. Grounded. Because once doubt disappears, it takes the chaos with it. What's left isn't noise, it's clarity. And clarity doesn't push you to act quickly. It makes you act correctly. I stood up slowly and walked toward the door, not with urgency, not with hesitation, but with control. Her voice was still coming from the other room, soft and careful, the same tone I had heard the night before. But this time I wasn't listening for meaning. I already understood it. This time I was stepping into it. When I reached the hallway, I saw her standing there, turned slightly away, phone near her ear, completely comfortable in a moment she thought was hidden. And that's what stood out the most, not the conversation itself, but how natural it had become for her. How easy it was. How normal it looked. And that's when it ended. Not because of what she said, but because of how easily she said it. I didn't speak immediately. I just stood there for a second, letting the moment exist exactly as it was. Because some moments don't need interruption, they need to be seen clearly. And once they are, they don't need explanation. She turned a second later. And everything changed. Her eyes met mine, and in that instant the entire situation shifted. The comfort she had a second ago disappeared. The control disappeared. The illusion disappeared. What was left was reality. "What are you doing?" she asked quickly, pulling the phone slightly away from her ear but not ending the call. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, calm, steady, present in a way that didn't leave room for confusion. "Who is that?" I asked. Simple. Direct. Not emotional. And that's what made it different. Because it wasn't a question. It was confirmation. She hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was enough. "No one," she said. And that answer settled everything. Not because I believed it, but because I didn't need to anymore. I nodded slightly, not in agreement but in understanding. "Tell them you'll call back," I said calmly. There was no anger in my voice. No raised tone. No urgency. Just control. And control, when it's real, doesn't need to show itself. She looked at me for a moment, searching my face for something, anything, that she could use to manage the situation. But there was nothing there for her to work with. No confusion. No hesitation. No reaction she could shape. So she ended the call. Slowly. Carefully. Like the movement itself might change something. It didn't. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was clear. The kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to hide behind. "What is this?" she asked, her voice no longer confident, no longer controlled. It was uncertain now, searching for something to hold on to. "This is the part where you stop pretending," I said. And that was the moment everything shifted completely. Because now there was no space left for anything else. No denial. No excuses. No control. She tried anyway. People always do. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. But the words didn't land. They didn't carry weight. Because they didn't matter anymore. "It is exactly what I think," I replied. Calm. Certain. Final. And that's when it broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Internally. Her posture changed. Her expression shifted. Because she realized something she hadn't expected. This wasn't a situation she could talk her way out of. This wasn't a conversation she could control. This was something already decided. "I can explain," she said, stepping slightly closer. "But explanation requires time. And time was already gone." "You don't need to," I said. And that sentence ended the conversation before it even began. Because when someone says that, it means one thing: they already know enough. She stopped moving completely. Because now there was nothing left to do. Nothing left to say. Nothing left to control. I looked at her for a moment longer, not with anger, not with resentment, but with clarity. Because clarity removes everything else. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "And now I'm making mine." That was it. No speech. No argument. No emotion. Just truth. And truth doesn't need anything else. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Because there are moments when everything becomes so clear that words don't fit anymore. I turned and walked back into the room, not looking back, not waiting for anything. Because once you make a decision like that, you don't hesitate. You move. Behind me the silence stayed. Unbroken. Unchanged. Because the truth had already done everything it needed to do. And some endings don't come with noise. They come with certainty. Just for a second. But that second was enough. "No one," she said. And that answer settled everything. Not because I believed it, but because I didn't need to anymore. I nodded slightly, not in agreement but in understanding. "Tell them you'll call back," I said calmly. There was no anger in my voice. No raised tone. No urgency. Just control. And control, when it's real, doesn't need to show itself. She looked at me for a moment, searching my face for something, anything, that she could use to manage the situation. But there was nothing there for her to work with. No confusion. No hesitation. No reaction she could shape. So she ended the call. Slowly. Carefully. Like the movement itself might change something. It didn't. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was clear. The kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to hide behind. "What is this?" she asked, her voice no longer confident, no longer controlled. It was uncertain now, searching for something to hold on to. "This is the part where you stop pretending," I said. And that was the moment everything shifted completely. Because now there was no space left for anything else. No denial. No excuses. No control. She tried anyway. People always do. It's not what you think, she said quickly. But the words didn't land. They didn't carry weight. Because they didn't matter anymore. It is exactly what I think, I replied. Come. Certain. Final. And that's when it broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Internally. Her posture changed. Her expression shifted. Because she realized something she hadn't expected. This wasn't a situation she could talk her way out of. This wasn't a conversation she could control. This was something already decided. I can explain, she said, stepping slightly closer. But explanation requires time. And time was already gone. You don't need to, I said. And that sentence ended the conversation before it even began. Because when someone says that, it means one thing, they already know enough. She stopped moving completely. Because now there was nothing left to do. Nothing left to say. Nothing left to control. I looked at her for a moment longer, not with anger, not with resentment, but with clarity. Because clarity removes everything else. You made your choice, I said quietly. And now I'm making mine. That was it. No speech. No argument. No emotion. Just truth. And truth doesn't need anything else. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Because there are moments when everything becomes so clear that words don't fit anymore. I turned and walked back into the room, not looking back, not waiting for anything. Because once you make a decision like that, you don't hesitate. You move. Behind me the silence stayed. Unbroken. Unchanged. Because the truth had already done everything it needed to do. And some endings don't come with noise. They come with certainty.